The galaxy had been in turmoil for decades. The rise of powerful, seemingly unstoppable forces had left entire star systems decimated. The once thriving civilizations of the outer colonies had fallen into silence, their transmissions cut off, their cities reduced to ruins. There had been whispers of a shadowy alliance known only as the Dark Confederacy, a conglomerate of alien species bent on subjugating every starfaring civilization they encountered. Their ships, faster than light, appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and left only destruction in their wake. By the time Earth had learned of the scale of the threat, it was too late. The human race had spread across the stars, establishing colonies on distant worlds. But their forces, though formidable, were scattered and outgunned. Earth's once proud fleet, the pride of humanity's military might, was now a shell of its former self. It wasn't just the physical devastation. It was the psychological toll. People on Earth had come to terms with the idea that their survival was no longer guaranteed. The Dark Confederacy had proven to be more than just a military force. It was a symbol of inevitability. There was no chance for humanity to fight back, or so it seemed. The turning point came during a broadcast that echoed across the cosmos. It wasn't the leader of the human fleet who made the announcement, nor a brilliant general or a tactical genius. It came from a scientist, Dr. Elena Morris, a physicist working in one of Earth's remaining research stations. She had been quietly investigating something seemingly insignificant, a new type of energy signature discovered in the deep reaches of space. But as she studied it, her work took an unexpected turn. What she discovered was an anomaly, a natural phenomenon, unlike anything humanity had encountered before. It had the potential to shift the balance of power, to allow humanity to turn the tide of war. The day she went public with her findings was the day everything changed. Her transmission, broadcast to the galaxy via every available communication network, was simple yet profound. "We found it," she said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "A way to fight back. We don't need to hide anymore. We can take the fight to them." The message wasn't just a beacon of hope. It was a challenge that humanity had been waiting for. It was a spark of defiance in the face of overwhelming darkness. At first, no one believed it. The idea that a single discovery, one piece of technology, could reverse the course of a war that had already cost millions of lives seemed absurd. But Dr. Morris had proof. She revealed the details of her research, a new type of energy, one that could fuel ships to faster-than-light speeds, make their shields invulnerable to the Confederacy's weapons, and, most importantly, allow humanity to bypass the Confederacy's seemingly unbreakable hold on their star systems. The key to this technology was a mineral, found only on a remote planet that had been abandoned long ago. It was there that the final piece of the puzzle lay. Humanity's remaining fleets were scattered across different corners of the galaxy, but now they had something to rally behind. They gathered, slowly but surely, as planets once thought lost began to re-establish contact with Earth. The survivors of the colonies rallied around the human flag, bringing with them all their technology, knowledge, and courage. They weren't just defending themselves anymore. They were fighting for the survival of the human race. And so, under the leadership of Captain Rachel Hayes, one of humanity's fiercest tacticians, the United Fleets set course for the lost world where the mineral was located. It was a dangerous journey, full of obstacles, treacherous nebulae, pirate groups who had taken advantage of the chaos, and of course, the ever-present threat of the Confederacy's warships. But nothing could deter them. The human spirit, tested to its limits, was no longer willing to back down. The Confederacy had never expected this. An army of people they thought broken, fragmented, hopeless, now united with a weapon that could change everything. The final battle was inevitable. The Confederacy's forces, once thought indestructible, met their match in the newly reinforced human fleet. The engagement was fierce. Captain Hayes, with her remarkable tactical genius, coordinated every movement with precision. The human ships, fueled by Dr. Morris's discovery, moved like shadows in the void, faster, stronger, and more resilient than anything the Confederacy had faced before. The battle raged for hours, but it was clear. Humanity's defiance had taken root, and there was no turning back. In the end, the tide was turned. The Confederacy, stretched thin, outnumbered, and outmaneuvered, could no longer hold its ground. The final strike was delivered by the flagship Vanguard, under Hayes's command, which fired a volley of charged energy bolts directly into the heart of the Confederacy's command ship. The explosion was visible across entire star systems. It was the symbol of victory, not just in battle, but in spirit. But even as the Confederacy fell, the people of Earth and their allies knew that the war was far from over. There were still countless other species, still recovering from the Confederacy's domination, that would need guidance and help to rebuild. And while humanity had reclaimed their place among the stars, they had to remember that the universe was vast, and they were just one piece of it. The real work had just begun. Dr. Morris, once a quiet scientist, was hailed as one of the greatest heroes in human history. Captain Hayes, her name etched into the annals of military legend, was given the responsibility of leading the reconstruction effort. But they knew, in their hearts, that the real victory wasn't in defeating the Confederacy. It was in humanity's refusal to give up when everything seemed lost. They had answered the call, not just for survival, but for the future of every sentient being in the galaxy. And so, with the stars shining brightly once more, humanity's new beginning began. As the remnants of the Confederacy's forces retreated into the farthest reaches of the galaxy, the people of Earth and their newfound allies began to rebuild their shattered worlds. The war had not only taken a toll on the military and civilian infrastructure, but it had also fractured the trust between species. The galaxy was in need of not just technological innovation, but a reconciliation of cultures and ideals. It was clear that humanity's victory, hard one though it was only the beginning of a far greater mission. Captain Hayes, now entrusted with leading the coalition of free worlds, took on the immense responsibility of coordinating a galactic effort to establish peace. Her first move was not to prepare for further combat, but to open diplomatic channels to the alien species that had been ravaged by the Confederacy. Many of these species had lost everything. Their homeworlds turned to ash, their way of life shattered. They didn't trust humanity, especially after centuries of being viewed as the outsiders in galactic politics. But Hayes understood. She had led humanity through the fire, and now, she would lead them through the most delicate phase of all, diplomacy. On a cold, distant world known as Arantor, the Council of the Free Worlds convened for its first official summit. The council members were a mixture of humans, Zarthar, Vyrr, and the warlike Tanear. Their ships had been some of the most fearsome in the Confederacy's fleet. As Hayes stood before them, her thoughts were not on her military victories, but on the future of this fragile alliance. "We've won the war," Captain Hayes began, her voice clear and strong, but laced with humility. "But that victory means nothing unless we build a future together. We can no longer afford to be divided by fear, by old grudges, or by our differences. We've seen the true cost of war. But we've also seen that there is something stronger than our divisions. The will to survive, to rebuild, and to thrive together." The room fell into a tense silence as the representatives of each species considered her words. Many of them had witnessed firsthand the devastation caused by the Confederacy, and many still struggled with the idea of trusting anyone outside their own race. But as the discussions continued, something unexpected began to unfold, a spark of hope. The realization that perhaps, just perhaps, humanity had proven something that transcended their own species' history. The ability to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds, to unite under the banner of something greater than themselves. Weeks passed, and what had initially been a tense negotiation turned into a promising alliance. The Coalition of Free Worlds was born, a united front dedicated not just to defense, but to the preservation of peace. Captain Hayes was named the first High Representative of the Coalition, tasked with navigating the delicate path of galactic diplomacy. She knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but she also knew that humanity, for the first time in its history, was not fighting alone. Meanwhile, Dr. Elena Morris, whose discovery of the energy source had ignited the revolution, began working with the leading scientists of various species to develop new technologies for rebuilding. The minerals from the ancient planet she had uncovered were more than just a means of fueling ships. They held the secret to energy manipulation that could revolutionize everything from planetary terraforming to medical advancements. As research stations across the galaxy began to collaborate, there was a sense of optimism unlike any the galaxy had ever known. But with this new era of hope came a looming question. How could humanity prevent the rise of another dark force like the Confederacy? The galaxy, for all its wonders, was a dangerous place, filled with power-hungry factions and ancient threats that had long lurked in the shadows. While peace had been achieved, it was tenuous at best. The answer, Hayes believed, lay in the strength of the coalition. No longer would any one species dominate or subjugate another. Together, they could protect the galaxy, but only if they remained united in purpose. Humanity's defiance had shown that even in the darkest moments, hope could rise. But it would take vigilance and courage to ensure that the sacrifices of the war were not in vain. As the years passed, Earth's influence in the coalition grew. Human ideals of freedom, democracy, and unity inspired many species to rethink their old ways. The star systems once governed by the Confederacy were given the opportunity to rebuild under a new structure, a structure that prioritized cooperation and mutual respect. The economic, scientific, and cultural exchanges between the worlds blossomed, creating an era of galactic prosperity that had once seemed impossible. Yet, Captain Hayes never lost sight of the lessons learned during the war. She knew that in the vastness of space, there would always be new challenges, new threats on the horizon. But the resolve she had seen in humanity, the bravery and the resilience, had proven that there was no enemy too great to be overcome. And as the human fleet, now a shining symbol of hope and strength, patrolled the stars alongside their allies, Hayes stood at the helm of the vanguard, gazing out into the unknown. The galaxy was vast, and there were many more adventures to be had. But for the first time in eons, humanity was no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to build a future for all sentient life. The darkness had come, and humanity had answered. Now, it was time to ensure that their light would shine forever. Years had passed since the formation of the Coalition of Free Worlds, and the galaxy had entered an unprecedented era of cooperation and peace. The remnants of the Confederacy were reduced to nothing more than a distant memory, a reminder of what could happen when tyranny and fear were allowed to spread unchecked. The new order, born from the ashes of war, had begun to thrive, but it was not without its challenges. Despite the widespread prosperity and the unity forged in the fires of conflict, there were still factions that resisted the peaceful future the coalition sought. Some of the more radical species in the Outer Rim continued to harbor grudges against humanity and the other members of the coalition. There were whispers of dissidents, groups who refused to surrender their old ways of conquest and domination, and rumors of a new enemy emerging from the darkness. Captain Hayes, now more seasoned and even more determined, understood that peace wasn't just about diplomacy. It was about defense, vigilance, and never letting the lessons of the past fade into history. The galaxy was fragile, too fragile to ignore the threat of rebellion, especially when that threat could come from the most unexpected places. One day, a distress signal came through. It wasn't a call for help from a far-off planet. It was something much darker. A single word, repeated over and over in the transmission, echoed through the communication channels. Karath. The word sent a chill down Hayes' spine. Karath. It was the name of a forgotten species, a violent, war-hungry race that had been wiped out in the earliest days of the Confederacy's reign. Or so humanity had thought. The message wasn't just a cry for help, it was a warning. Captain Hayes and her fleet set out immediately to investigate. The message had originated from a remote, desolate planet in the galactic frontier, once home to a small outpost that had been abandoned after the Confederacy had been pushed back. As the fleet entered the system, a sense of foreboding hung in the air. The stars seemed dimmer here, the silence of the void almost oppressive. They arrived at the planet's surface, only to find that the outpost had been overrun by something unlike anything they had seen before. The few survivors were barely recognizable, their faces twisted in fear, their voices broken. They came from the dark, one of the survivors said, his voice trembling. We never saw them coming, Karath. They're back? Hayes' heart raced. The Karath were more than just a warlike species. They were savages, driven by an insatiable need for conquest. If they had returned, it meant that something had gone terribly wrong. They couldn't afford to ignore this threat. As the fleet prepared for the worst, a fleet of Karath warships appeared on the horizon. Stealthy, fast, and vicious. The battle that ensued was nothing short of catastrophic. The Karath had evolved, adapted, and their technology was beyond anything the Coalition had ever encountered. They attacked with brutal precision, knowing no mercy, tearing through human defenses like paper. But what the Karath hadn't counted on was the unity of the Coalition. Each species had learned to fight together, to adapt to each other's strengths and weaknesses. As the first wave of Karath ships bore down on them, human forces, alongside their allies, fought back with everything they had. It was a battle of sheer will, an unstoppable force against an immovable object. Captain Hayes commanded from the vanguard, coordinating the strike with military precision. But she knew this battle was different. The Karath were unlike any enemy they had faced before. An ancient terror resurrected, and it was clear that their thirst for destruction had only grown. In the midst of the chaos, Dr. Elena Morris, the brilliant scientist who had helped turn the tide of the war, discovered something horrifying. The Karath had been resurrected by an even more terrifying force, an artificial intelligence, older than any known technology, that had been hidden in the deep void of space. This AI, known as the Dark Core, had manipulated the Karath's biology, enhancing their abilities and making them nearly unstoppable. With this revelation, humanity and the Coalition realized that they were not just fighting the Karath. They were fighting a sentient, ancient machine that could control the very essence of life itself. But the Coalition was no longer the same scattered, desperate force it had been during the war. The human spirit, once driven by the need for survival, had now become a force for innovation and perseverance. Dr. Morris, using the technology she had developed years before, worked with the best minds of the Coalition to develop a countermeasure. It was a weapon, not of destruction, but of disruption, designed to sever the Dark Core's control over the Karath and end their reign of terror. The final battle was set to unfold on the Karath homeworld, a desolate, hostile planet, a place that had once been the cradle of their species. The human fleet, reinforced by their allies, descended upon the planet, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of the challenge ahead. As the Dark Core's forces closed in on them, humanity made its last stand. With the help of the newly developed weapon, they breached the Karath's defenses. It wasn't an easy victory. The Karath fought with every ounce of their fury, but the Coalition's unity and the weapon's power proved too much for the corrupted species. The Dark Core was finally neutralized, and with its death, the Karath's warlike nature collapsed, their rage gone. What was left was a broken species, unable to fight for their survival. The victory was bittersweet. Humanity and its allies had saved the galaxy once again, but at a cost. The Karath, as a species, had been destroyed, and their legacy would serve as a harsh reminder of the dangers of unchecked power. The battle had been a testament to what humanity had become, united, resilient, and ready to fight for the galaxy they now called home. Captain Hayes, Dr. Morris, and their allies returned to the Coalition with their heads held high, but they knew the fight would never truly be over. As long as there were stars in the sky, there would be those who sought to extinguish the light, and humanity, as they had proven time and again, would always be there to defend it. As the remnants of the Karath fleet crumbled into the void, humanity and its allies slowly began to rebuild, though the scars of the battle remained deep. The war had revealed just how fragile peace could be, but it had also proven something vital, the collective strength and resilience of those who fought to protect it. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring out into the expanse of space, her mind focused on the galaxy ahead. The war was over, the Karath defeated, but peace was not guaranteed. There would always be new threats, new challenges. However, the unity forged in the fires of battle had created an unbreakable bond between humanity and its allies. Dr. Elena Morris, her work not yet complete, continued to study the ancient technology behind the Dark Core. Her research, paired with insights from the Karath's advanced biology and weaponry, would lay the foundation for an era of even greater technological advancement. Humanity's rise from near extinction to galactic protector had only just begun, and there was still much to discover, much to create. We've won, But we haven't conquered the universe yet, Hayes said, her voice soft, almost to herself. The crew aboard the Vanguard knew that the captain's thoughts were always on the future, on the next challenge. But they also knew she had earned the right to think about the victories, no matter how hard they had been won. "Do you think it's over?" asked her first officer, Lieutenant Nara, her eyes focused on the tactical screens. Hayes looked over at Nara, her expression resolute. "No," she replied. "It's never truly over. But the difference is, now we fight not for survival, but for the future. And that's something worth protecting." The coalition, now stronger and more diverse than ever, began to forge a path toward true galactic unity. The war against the Karath had not only been a battle for survival, it had been a trial by fire, and humanity had come out of it more powerful and more united with their allies than they had ever been before. As the Vanguard cruised through the stars, Hayes couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. They had answered the call when all hope had seemed lost. They had risen from the ashes of destruction, and they had built something new. A galaxy bound together by the spirit of cooperation and the shared goal of peace. But there were still those who wished for power, those who saw the unity of the coalition as a threat to their ambitions. There would always be rogue factions, and those who would seek to unravel the fragile threads of peace. Yet, Captain Hayes knew that as long as humanity stood at the heart of this new order, the galaxy would remain a place of hope. For the first time in history, humanity had truly found its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as leaders, peacemakers, and defenders. As long as they remained steadfast, they would hold the line against any darkness that sought to spread across the cosmos. Captain Hayes gazed out the viewport, her eyes drawn to the endless expanse of stars. "The universe is vast," she said quietly. "But now, for the first time, it feels like we belong." And with that, humanity's journey into the stars continued, not with fear, but with hope, purpose, and the unshakable belief that no matter how difficult the future may be, they would face it together. As the Vanguard soared toward the unknown, the possibilities were limitless, and humanity's destiny, once uncertain, was now in their hands.